recommend trying to follow along. And so if you're giving that a go, again, we'd recommend that. If you do have any questions, if I'm going too fast or too slow, I'll always keep an eye on chat, so you can just feel free to ask your questions. And I would really recommend following along because it won't be hard code today, but you'll get that feeling of actually writing code, which is a big step. I would say over just watching a video or something. So if you can get that set up in the next couple minutes, definitely a good idea. Okay, let us get started. So introduction to Python, as everybody knows. Our itinerary for today is a little bit about me, a little bit about you. We'll do some Python, and we'll get some next cool steps and other stuff. So my name is Nicholas. I'm a data scientist at BCloudReady. We kind of do two things at BCloudReady. We both develop artificial intelligence products. So we have basically a product that we've just got in the market recently where we see inventory data for a company, and we try to predict how much inventory they're going to need in the future. Because basically artificial intelligence, a lot of the methods, machine learning algorithms fundamentally, are letting people predict things much more accurately than they used to in the past. So of course, the company has to buy less inventory, that saves them money. There's just heaps and heaps of amazing business cases for machine learning. So that's just one of them. That's a project I was just recently working on. If you want to join us on Facebook, that would be cool. We're a cool group of people, so you would like us, I hope. And a little bit about yourself. Here's just a survey link. If you don't mind doing that, it's really just for you guys' benefit, because if you do the survey, then I can know in aggregate more data about you, and then we can make better recommendations. So I'm just going to mute somebody there. So obviously I would if people are really interested in web scraping, or people are really interested in machine learning, or people are really interested in anything else, if you do the survey, I will get to learn about that, and then I can make those posts for you, because we have a lot of technical talent in house, so we'd be happy to make it for you. Just trying to mute people as they come in. Welcome to everybody who came in. I hope that you have your IDs going, or at least you're ready to see some Python. I will also be emailing out this survey link afterwards, and there's a lot of us in here today, guys, so if nobody does it, I will be very sad, so please do it for me. It's 5 minutes. And so I'll be emailing this link out at the end. So into Python, let's get to the good stuff. So Python is a programming language. If people don't really know what programming is, that's okay. It is totally beginner friendly, so that's where I'm going to start. Basically, when you program a computer, you're going to give it a bunch of data, and you're giving it a bunch of rules, and then it's going to manipulate that data, basically, and then give it back to you in some form. That's kind of the most high-level way to think of programming. Obviously before, human beings would count things, and we used abacuses, and we use other kinds of computing things, and remembering, because if you're using an abacus, for example, you're remembering all the data in moving the abacus around, and then you want to do calculations. So there's rules for sliding the things around the abacus. If anybody doesn't know, an abacus is an old counting machine. And obviously, they just got more and more complicated and more complex, I guess. So we had calculators back in high school, grade school, or whatever. And now, obviously, computers it's just more and more complex computers until smartphones are these amazing ones. So, but really, it's just giving the computer data, saying here's the rules I want you to manipulate the data by, and then it does that, and it gives the data back to you. It's the kind of the most high level way to think of it. Okay. So some kind of high level ideas about Python is that it's very easy to use in comparison to other languages. So basically, over time, languages started very, very difficult to use, punch cards and stuff, and that's how you had to tell the computer to do operations. And then over the years, they just got kind of more and more easy to use in the sense that they're very readable by human beings. So as you get into Python today, you're going to be definitely feeling overwhelmed, especially if you're a beginner. You'll be what's all this stuff going on? And obviously, everybody feels like that, so don't worry about it at all. But in comparison to other languages, you'll see that the syntax in Python, which is basically whenever I say syntax, I just want you to think of just like in English, we capitalize certain letters, we put periods in certain places. That's syntax, right? So if you want to write out your thoughts in English, you have to follow certain rules to be able to communicate with other people. Just like this, you're communicating with a computer, so there's certain kind of ways you have to write things to give these rules to a computer, right? In English, we are much better, or spoken languages, we're much better at interpreting things. So if you forget a period in your text to me, I'll still understand what you mean. But computers, if you forget a period, they will not understand anything. They are very rigid. But anyways, so again, Python, it's very easy to read by human beings, which is like really great. And it's a very good language to learn for that reason. It's very, very powerful in the sense of extensibility. Extensibility just means that when you're using Python and you're using so Python is amazing for data science, it's amazing for like so many applications, basically because other people at places like Google or places like, universities, university professors, very, very skilled people write basically libraries. And libraries are basically like libraries are a little misleading. I would say almost a way to think of it is almost like a tool chest. So they're going to write a tool chest filled with all these tools, and you can just pull their tool chest into your Python program and use all of their tools. So remember, just like I said, it was like you're going to give the computer data and a set of rules. Well, like kind of like these tools are like sets of rules that the computer will use to like manipulate data. So you can, to use this analogy, you basically can use all these free tools that are created by other people. And that's kind of like, that's what it means to be extensible. A language to be extensible is that there's a huge community around it. Because, like, let's say, for example, I want to write a video game in Python. That's not really, people don't really write video games in Python, but let's say I did anyways. I might want to have I might want to need some Python code to do the graphics, to control the AI robots, to maybe like aim my gun or my cursor or whatever it happens to be. I could write all those things from scratch, but it would take me forever. It'd be much nicer to use somebody else's code that already does all of it for me. So this is what we mean by extensible. Like there's a huge community around it. If there's something you want to do in Python, you can probably find a library that does like all of it for you. You just have to read through the library, understand how to use the functions in it, and then you can just like use that library for free as well. So it's crazy. Again, because of the extensibility, it is very, very sought after by employers. So once you learn Python, like I've coded in a lot of different languages, especially in school. I learned a lot of different languages. These days, I like really just use Python. I mean, a little bit of other stuff, but like Python really can do so much for you. So it's a great language to learn, especially to start. And again, the community is amazing. Lots of places to find answers. I'll just show you GitHub really quickly. I'm just going to bring up a thing. If I'm going too slow or too fast, guys, please feel free to let me know, and I can speed up or slow down. GitHub.com. So, for example, if you've heard of machine learning, it's sort of like artificial intelligence. This is GitHub. This is a website called GitHub, and basically, don't be overwhelmed by all this stuff. But if, let's say, I'm writing in here, I can search for repositories. Let's say I go machine learning Python, and a repository is just like it's basically just a folder. Oh, wrong place. Machine learning Python. It's just like this is just a bunch of this is all code people have written. Upload to the internet, and I can download it and use it for free. So if, for example, I want to like get a whole machine learning course with different code in it that's been written, I can just like go into this person's basically it's just a folder basically full of code, and I can take all their code and any tools that they've created in here, I can just import them into my like decision trees, demonstrators, naive Bayes, all this stuff. I can just use all of their code to do this for free, and there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of repository of free tools just out there on the internet, just waiting for you to use. So it's an amazing community. Python's a great place to be. So yeah, moving along here. Yeah, so just some learning tips. Just some quick stuff I wish I knew at the start, and I'm assuming this is like mostly for people who are kind of beginner, is that you don't have to understand everything you see. So we're going to be doing the IDE today, which is the Interactive Development Environment. I'll also be showing you that. That has a lot of overwhelming settings in it, just like if you open up Microsoft Word for the first time. Like, I don't know half of what Microsoft Word does. You don't need to. That's okay. You kind of just ignore it and just use the parts you need to kind of do what you got to do. Arrow outputs we'll see today, GitHub repos I just showed you, help statements, oh my, it's so much. But everybody feels overwhelmed. Don't worry about that at the start. Practicing each day gets you a lot farther than doing like 8 hours on a Saturday. I used to do that. I'd be like, okay, Saturday's the day. I'm putting off studying all week. Let's get it all done. But actually, if you just do like 30 minutes a day, it gets you a lot farther because you don't you'll forget everything. If you do an 8-hour chunk once a week, you'll just forget all of it. So kind of just a nice little tip there. And then I'll just show you kind of one more cool thing before we get into it. It's just like finding a nice way to be like finding something that motivates you. So I'll just show you the Kaggle COVID. Let's do Kaggle COVID-19. So basically this is, if anybody's using Python for data science, which I assume some people are like interested in data science or at least machine learning in here, Kaggle is this really cool basically online competition site where they have all of these different competitions where basically you can use your data science skills to analyze data sets and try to have insights about that, and then you compare your scores to other people's scores. So there's like a competitive aspect to it, but also it's like actually working on data sets are really important for like the world. You know what I mean? Like COVID stuff. So some really huge names at big universities are going to be like working on these problems, and you're going to be competing against them. And I know that sounds overwhelming at the start, but like it's such a really great way to like practice up your skills, and like you might actually learn something that makes a difference. So that's kind of just a cool way to keep yourself motivated, is find something you actually care about working on. Great. So let's get into the code. Oh yeah, sorry. Just one more thing is just to become. One big tip is just like as you're learning, definitely learn how to do lots of googling. I've made this like quadrant thing. It really should be like a progression, not the greatest graph. But so if you basically up here is just this is the easiest way. So at the start, I really recommend just do does Kaggle all use Python? Yeah, I actually don't know if it like I don't really know if you would do. Yeah, you could use any language you want. I'm actually quite certain of that now. You can use any language you want, but basically what happens is you download a data set, you analyze it, and then what happens is that you're going to use your analysis, so you're going to use your machine learning model to make predictions. You're then going to take those predictions and upload them back into Kaggle, and Kaggle is going to have basically a hidden answer key on the back end that is going to see if your predictions are right or wrong, and they give you a score based off that answer key. So you could download their data set, analyze it with any tools you want, and then upload it as long as it's in the right format that they want. So you could use R or any other kind of stack, but like I would guess that like 85+% of people just use Python to do it. Python's kind of like the de facto language for data science. Besides that, there's R as well, but over time, like Python's just completely winning out. So, anyways, yeah, just going back to this at the start. YouTube is really great because it will give you a lot of context. So if you have like a question you don't know how to answer it, you can go to YouTube, just type in like how do I do this on YouTube, or like something that gives it obviously a search query that makes sense. And then it's gonna basically tell you. It's gonna have someone walk you through it step by step, and they might even like tell you about things you didn't even realize were like broken in the first place. So starting with YouTube is a really really great place to go. The next thing to do is like you can just Google full tutorials. So because obviously reading's a bit faster, or a lot faster, depending on how fast you read, than like watching things on YouTube. One thing I'd really recommend is you can get a YouTube like video speed controller, which you can watch your videos at like 2x speed, 3x speed, so you can like kind of really really speed things up. That's actually how one of my favorite ways to learn is videos on 3x speed. But anyways, so you can also get full tutorials on Google, and then lastly, or like thirdly, I would say Stack Exchange. Stack Exchange is a place where people are going to give you full answers to questions you ask, and these are like professors, like very, very skilled people. You can ask a full question on there, and they're going to give you a very technical answer, usually in code in the language you're asking it. So if you're like the type of person who likes to interact on forums, Stack Exchange is amazing, but it will be very technical, and when you're starting, basically that might be a little bit overwhelming. So I would say, off the start, stick with Google or stick with YouTube. And then lastly, I'll be showing you documentation. And let's mute that. And let's mute that person. And so lastly, I'll be showing you some documentation today. And documentation is voice is not good, and could you speak a little bit lower? Okay, so I'm going to try to hold my mic at my face and see if that makes it any better. I'm also not sure if it's possible that the voice gets a little bit messed up when people join the meeting. So yeah, please let me know. I'm definitely reading chat. Thank you for the feedback on that. So I will. Now it's better. Okay, great. I'm going to try to hold the mic at my face except for when I'm typing. So just let me know. Let me know if the audio gets bad again. We'll try to fix it. Okay, great. Yeah, and lastly, I'll be showing you guys how to use the help statements for documentation. Documentation's like basically if you buy a car, there's going to be a manual that tells you how to drive the car. But in this case, it can be like very, very technical, and it takes you like kind of a year before you're going to be comfortable really using documentation. So documentation is kind of like the last thing to go to. So, okay, let's jump into PyCharm. Cool. Okay, so this is really exciting, and I hope that anyone who's just joining us today is kind of excited, like based on what I told you about how powerful and amazing this can be. Do you have any recommendations on YouTube tutorial? So the way I would actually say to use YouTube is like you can take a general course, and I'll actually be talking about some courses later on, but you would basically want to be come to YouTube with a problem. Like let's say you're like trying to write a simple script, you're trying to solve a problem and you don't really know how to just solve the problem. The best thing to do is to like go in and like go to YouTube with a problem or go to Google with a problem. So let's say for example, I'm gonna go and do. Can I use Anaconda instead of PyCharm? Yeah, 100%. You can use any IDE you want. So I think you're talking about Spider is the Conda IDE. That's actually my preferred one. But yeah, like go nuts. Just anything that you can type in. So I'll come back to answering the question one in just a little bit in a little while because it'll make sense though. But so let's just take a look at the IDE. This is just like, it kind of looks overwhelming and there's all this stuff going on. And don't feel like that too much, right? So basically, just like when you open up Word, there's your place that you write stuff. But with computers, of course, computer programming, we're giving the computer instructions and we want it to do a certain thing and then give us some data back, right? So in this case, the only difference, like from, let's say, just somewhere where I was just writing stuff, is I need somewhere to have the output kind of come back to me. Fine, let's go to my Python console. Anyways, so basically what's going to happen is I'm going to write some code in here, and then I'm going to go to run the code, and then whatever happens is going to happen, and then I'm going to get some output here. Now, the first function that I'm going to basically show you guys is the print function. And so when basically programs are running, they're not going to tell us what they're doing, they're just going to go execute the commands. That's because if all the programs you're using right now to, like, go through WebEx and have your internet browser open, we're always telling you what you're doing, you'd just be drowning in messages. So the first thing we need to do when we run programs is we need to tell them when we want to hear from the computer, right? Because otherwise the computer's just going to go off and do the instructions that we want it to do, and it's just not going to talk to us, right? So I'm just going to start, and this is kind of like, I hope you're excited if this is your first program, that this is sort of like where everybody begins. So let's, without further ado, gonna go print hello world. Cool. And we're just gonna go run tutorial. Progress. So I'm just gonna unlock good. Okay, great. Okay, great. So I'm just gonna tell you what just happened here. Is basically I wrote this in here. Now just think of this as just like your Word editor, but this is just gonna like make writing code easier, as we'll see. Basically, I went to, if you're not seeing this, by the way, you can go File, and you can go New, and then you can choose Python file, give it a name, and then it should show up here on the side. Now, if you go to run and you're not running your Python, the one you want to, you can actually click on it and then go run this right here, and it will go run it. And thereafter, you can just click run and go run up here. So it's sort of like this. The first time you're going to have to set it up here, and thereafter you can just run it from here. If anybody has any questions or they're stuck on that, I can like take a second to help you through. But if not, we'll just kind of keep moseying along. Great. So we just did our first. This is our first like program actually, right? So basically, this print statement is what you need, like I'm saying, to have the computer tell you what's going on inside of it. Like, and this is called a function. So basically, the way you'll know functions is that functions are basically, there's different ways you can write them, but like basically it has some brackets like this where it's going to take the information. Remember what I said? It's giving the computer information, and then it's giving them some rules. So the rules in this case is print, and like that's what I want the computer to do, right? I'm telling it like that's the instructions, and the data I'm giving it is like hello world. Cool. So that's just our first one, and that's just where we started. And so what happens is when we run this, basically this is saying where on my computer the script is located. So that's just like the directory. There's nothing crazy there. This is my output, hello world, kind of as I'm expecting, and then process finished with error code 0. That means there was no errors. That's kind of what you want to see at the end of it, right? So I'm just going to break it to show you guys an error. So if, like I said, like you have to be very clear when you talk to computers. So if I run this away, it says syntax error, expected end of line while parsing, process So this all looks very scary, but really what this just means is that there was an error, so it exited with error code 1. There was an error, and so basically a syntax error is like one of the nicest errors you can get, because it basically just means that, like I was saying with English, when we put periods at things, you capitalize certain things, just like talking to the computer, you have to use a very formal language to the computer. That's computer coding, and so basically you need to finish your brackets off, and so like that's just a syntax error. Is you forgot a bracket, you forgot a period, you forgot just a little thing that you can easily correct. No big deal there, right? A nice thing about IDEs, which I was saying, is that see how as soon as this is already showing me, this is highlighted in red here, and there's red at the end, that's showing me that there's an error, right? Before I even need to run it, it's already telling me there's an error. So that's just one of the nice things about having the code. Writing code in IDEs is they'll kind of give you these heads up. Okay, cool. So that's going to go, the next thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is I'm going to go, I am a comment. So a huge thing about writing code is that you need to be able to communicate with yourself in the future and other people. So if you don't comment out your code, you're going to come back later on. Now, print hello world is pretty clear. I probably don't need to make a comment there. But if it was a more complex function, I would really want to code so that in the future I could read it, right? So that's how you do a comment. What's going to basically happen is if we run this, it is going to do nothing. So basically this hashtag here just means that it's going to ignore that line. And yeah, so we'll get moving along there. I hope everybody's got their things going. Now we're gonna kind of get into the code, and it's gonna move a little bit faster here. So yeah, this is a lot of background stuff. I'm just gonna be moving. Right. Okay. So cool. We are going to get into variables, and data types. So basically, when you're giving the computer instructions, you have to you have to give it data, and you have to give it instructions to manipulate it. So in your code, you want to store the data in something called variables. Variables, it sounds kind of crazy, like in math, you had variables and unknowns, and it's all kind of overwhelming and stuff like that. In Python, and in programming in general, variables are just like places that you store information, so you can kind of just think of them as like empty buckets that you're going to put information into, right? So I'm going to call like variable 1 equals, for example, hello world. There we go. Okay, so actually, I want to just bring up this menu that you guys might have seen coming up. See this thing here? This is just the IDE trying to do autocomplete for me. So if I put a P in, it's going to go and look through all the functions it has, and it's going to try to find the function that I want. So it could be, like, it could be POW or any of these different functions. That's all it's doing here. At the start, again, very overwhelming looking. Just ignore that and just type in your functions, right? So if I want to have print, I'm just going to ignore everything and I'm just going to type in print for myself. Of course, if I put a P in and I want it to autocomplete, I can just hit enter and then it'll autocomplete for me. But anyways, okay, so going back to variables. So what I've done here is this is the data, just like it was above, hello world. And then this equal signs means I'm putting it inside this variable. So that's pretty straightforward. I'm going to do good variable namings, which is a convention. I'm going to call this variable say hello, right? So say hello is now the variable hello world kind of thing. I'm going to do a variable called name equals Nicholas. That is my name. And these are what we're going to call strings. So basically, strings, again, sounds like crazy computer language. Basically, a string just means a bunch of sequences that are not going to be treated like numbers. They're going to be treated like letters, like in spoken English. So basically, I wouldn't, like the thing hello world plus Nicholas, although Python would do that, don't worry about it, it doesn't really make sense in the same mathematical way. So basically, you want Python to be able to know what kind of data you're working with. So I'll just do a bunch of other types. So strings, integers, x equals 5. Integers are just round numbers, if anybody remembers that from math class or not. Floats is going to be y equals 3.1419. I don't know if that's pi, but let's try to imagine it is. Let's do 3.14. Floats are just going to be things with decimals. They can be positive or negative. You know what I mean? So I could go like z is going to equal to negative 5.2. But if I just did this, it would just be an integer. And lastly, I'm going to just do booleans. So we're going to go bool t equals true, and bool f equals false. There we go. So cool. So there are more types of data than this, but these are kind of the ones that you're going to be working with a lot of the time. So basically, just whenever you're thinking it's going to be words or sentences, you're just thinking it's going to be strings. Whenever it's round numbers, it's integers. Whenever it's going to be decimals, these are called floats. So I don't know why they're not just called decimals. I think it's something to do with the fact that the decimal point can move around. It's floating, but it doesn't really matter. And booleans are just basically true or false values. There are other types of data, but these are kind of the ones we're going to be focused on today, and they're kind of like, they're basically the most important basic ones. And let's see, what are we going on to next? Yeah, okay, cool. So basically, just to let you know again, these are your variables. So that's a variable, that's a variable, that's a variable, and basically you just use an equal sign to put it in, to put your information into the, equal sign into the variable. So I'm just going to show you a couple more functions. So I'm going to get rid of our print world up here. And so we'll go, for example, print len name. So it's kind of cool. So a lot of times you kind of want to know how long a string is. And so if I hover over this, my IDE is going to give us a little bit of information about the len function. Let's see if it'll do it. There we go. So basically, if you look at this, it's a little bit overwhelming. You're like, built-ins, I don't know what that is. Len, it's written as weird language and stuff like that. All len basically does is when you put some information into len, So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go up here and it's going to be like, okay, what is variable equal to? It's going to look through your code. It's going to, oh yeah, right, variable's Nicholas. So it's going to put Nicholas in here, and then it's going to say, how long is Nicholas? And I think my name has 8 characters in it, and then it's going to print that out. So it's going to go run, and we're going to print 8. Cool, so that's just a built-in function. So like there's heaps and heaps of built-in functions in Python that can do all kinds of things. Like that can, just really anything you could ever want to do at any given point in Python, there's probably a way to do it. And this is what I was kind of saying before when somebody said, do I have recommendations? And the recommendation I would say is like, find some problem you want to solve. Just take any course. I mean, lots and lots of courses are really, really good. And then take your questions to Google. So I would say, for example, I would go like this. I would go, I would say, how to tell how many letters in string Python. I go, how do I count a letter in a string? Oh, count. Okay, that's another one. So we could use count. Oh, occurrences of a thing. Okay, cool. And you can kind of just like read through here, right? So this is just really what I would, let's just see, let's do length. How to count the length of a list in Python. Cool, yeah, so we'll use the len here. So then you just be like, okay, cool, I'll use len. So that's just a little example of like using more functions in Python. Let's go and do, so as well I could do, I'm going to show you guys another kind of, this is just the other way that you'll see functions done a lot. So I just want you to see this, is that in the case of all the functions I've been using so far, it's basically been function, brackets, put the data inside here, and you're off to the races. Sometimes there's specific functions that come with a certain data type. So for example, this might be a bit confusing, and if it is, I do apologize in advance, but I do think it's just worth me covering this off the start. So I can, just like I was showing you guys before, I can do this thing, another function called type. And so when I go and I print the type, it's going to go class str. Now remember how I said these are called strings? Numbers are called strings? So it's just going to tell me that it's a string. That's str is just short for string. If I change this instead of name, if I'm not working with name anymore and I'm working with x, we can look up here and say, oh, what's x? Oh, x is 5. It just is 5. I'm going to run that. We're going to see it's int for integer. Imagine you guys can guess what's going to happen now. If I go run this, and I'm going to see, oh, it's class float. That kind of makes sense, I'm hoping, right? Okay, great. So basically we have these different types. So another function I just want you to see the other way we can do a function is that sometimes you'll have functions that come off the back of things of a certain data type. So for example, I can say name dot, and there's a whole bunch of functions. These are just functions. They work the exact same way. You just call them slightly differently. So it's just syntax. Don't want you to get too scared here. But for example, I'm going to use the function upper like this, and I'm going to put my brackets at the back, and you're like, oh, that's confusing. Why can't they just have it consistent? Why can't it just be upper name like this? And guys, I sympathize. The upper name would be consistent, and it would make things easier. There's complicated reasons for why they can't do that, but just stay with me. So if we run this, it's going to print, excuse me, it's going to print my name in all uppercase. So this is a function that only happens off floats or off strings. So this type here is a string. It's going to go up here. Oh yeah, it's a string there. And then there's a whole bunch of functions that only work with strings. That's why you need a string here dot a function that only works with strings. So I just want to show you that as well. I don't think that's too confusing, but these are kind of the two different ways you're going to see functions being called in Python. And once you're both kind of like comfortable with those, you're good. Oftentimes people call these ones that come off the back methods, but they mean the exact same thing. Don't be too confused by it. So let's keep moving here. I'll just show you the common math operations. I don't think, so let's just do function examples. My typing accuracy is not the greatest in the world, and you don't need to worry about that. Function and method examples. So this is going to be a method, and print len name. That's going to be a function. So I'll just do function method singular. Good. Okay. So yeah, nothing to be afraid of there. And let's do. I'll show you the math operations. Print. Let's go up here and just comment these out. Oop. Math operations. Y plus x. plus z times 2. So basically these are just, actually let's go x times x. Okay, this little silly thing here is just all in to show you guys is that you can easily do all your math operations. This is just super basic stuff, and I know it's kind of boring, but like I should show you this because or else you're like, can I do math operations or not? You just won't know. So anyway, so just this is going to be y, which is some float up here, and it's just as soon as we go run, basically the way the computer is going to look at this is it's going to try to put the actual values into all these variables, and then it's going to use these things. So y plus x, this means multiplied by y divided by z plus z, and times 2 means squared, whereas if I did this, it would be cubed. It's just raised to the power of, right? So raised to the power of 8, whatever it happens to be. So we'll just go back to squared, and we run that. We're just going to get some number, so that happens to be a number. So that's pretty cool. You can do all that stuff. Another reason that I want to show you guys that you want to use variables through your code, and again, if you've come from another programming language, I don't need to sell you on variables, but if you're brand new, it's that you should be sold a little bit on variables. So I'm just going to do another example. Why we use variables. So if I want to say print, so I'm just going to go up here and comment this out again. Print. So square of ... So I'm going to do some squaring example. Do you guys know what's going to happen here? So basically there's a giveaway, right, that there is, it's underlined in red. So there's an error here. So you basically know it's probably not going to run. So if I go run it, it's going to be like, oh no, what's going on? Fair enough. So basically what I did here is that because I didn't put quotations around this to make this a string, because if I want to print out some like spoken language, like English, for example, I need to make it a string so that the computer recognizes that, just like I've been doing up here. If I don't do that, what it does is it thinks everything in here is a variable. So it's going to say print the square of, and it's going to say, okay, what is the? Well, I don't have a variable named the. Square, I don't know what that is. Of, don't know what that is either. So it's just going to give you an error because it goes through all of the data, and it says I don't know how to substitute data into these variables, so I can't do anything with that. So I just want to show you that because you'll probably make that mistake at some point, so it's kind of good. Also, another thing to just note is that you can use single brackets as long as you're consistent. So that will be a string. But if I do this, I'll get my error back. Cool, okay. So the square of, we're going to do comma x comma is comma x squared comma and it's there we go. Oh, I'll show you an escape character. No, I won't do that. It's a bit too much right now. Forget about escape characters. It's cube is this space x 3 plus period. Okay. So this is just an example of why we're going to want to use variables. So basically, this won't work. So what I want to do right now is I just want to print. If it's not kind of clear what I'm doing right here, I just want to say the square of whatever variables in x is that same thing. Times 2 is just to the power of 2, right? That's what a square means. And its cube is times 3, so to the power of 3. Right? Now, I've used this syntax here again. I don't want you guys to be afraid of syntax. But basically, whenever you are using a print statement, you use a string, and then you use this comma, and that's just going to put a space in, and then it's going to grab your variable and stuff like that. Now, this won't work. I don't think. I'm actually going to try to run this, see if it will work. I kind of don't. Yeah, I didn't think so. Right. Okay, so basically what it's saying here, this is another type of error, and it's good for you to see this. It's basically saying that we're trying to put these things together. It's trying to put these strings with these integers and integers and integers, and it's trying to put them all together, and it says, like, I don't know how to do that. Like, this is working with different data types, and this is going to be one of the things that actually is going to really bother you when you get into it, right? But this is actually not so confusing, and it's not so difficult at all. There's another function in here that's just going to take data of one type and translate it into a data of another type so it can all work together. So the function we're going to use here is we're going to go str, and we're going to put these as strs. I'm going to do that for all of them. Str and str. There we go. Cool. So now when we go to run this and print it, Cool. So basically what I did here is I just said, this is just another function that's built in. And remember, whenever you want to do anything and you're kind of thinking, oh my God, I want to print out its number, and I want to print out its square, and I want to print out its cube. So I am trying to do it, and it's giving me this crazy error, and I don't know what to do. Again, just take it to Google, and like as long as you can build that resiliency to like keep taking things to Google, you will figure it out because Google has all of the answers. It is awesome. So basically, all I did here is I took another function, and it basically, remember how I said x is an integer, right? Well, this print statement, it wants everything to be strings. So all I've done is I've taken a function that's going to take this integer and turn it into a string, right? And it's like that, I know that sounds a little bit complicated because we're kind of new to data types and stuff like that. But basically, all it's doing is it's just saying like, okay, instead of the number that I'm going to do multiplication and stuff with, I just want like basically almost like part of a spoken language. You know what I mean? Like if I'm writing it down in a sentence, because computers have to know the difference. Anyways, hopefully this is kind of clear, but basically what it's doing here is now it's going to say the square of 5 is 25 and its cube is 125, right? 5 times 5 times. So the reason why we use variables, the whole point of this little example that I'm trying to show you on here, is that if I didn't use variables, right, and I just put, let's say, 5 here, and I put 25 here, and I put 125 here, then if I, let's say, want to do 6 now, it's 6 and 36, and I don't even know what 36 times 6 is, but anyways, whatever that is, 200 and something. Anyways, I would have to do that by hand, but in this case, I can just go up here and I can just change what x is, right? So I change what x is, I run it, I run the thing, and now it goes square of 6 is 36, and its cube is, there we go, 216. Right, so obviously as your programs grow and grow and grow, you're going to have like the same information that you're going to be using all over. It's going to be a lot bigger information, a lot more complex information. So of course, what you really want to do is you want to store everything in variables as opposed to hard coding it. Like hard coding would be if I put like 6 here and then 36 here and 216 here. Anyway, so like I hope that's clear. If it's not, please type in the chat and I can elaborate a bit more. Let's see, what are we going to look at next? Cool. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is, so remember, all of these things seem like kind of very inconsequential by themselves, but once you kind of wrap your head around the language a little bit and the basics of it, you can chain these together to do really, really amazing things. So kind of just want to stay with it, the basics. We're going to go with logic and if statements. Cool. Okay, so we're going to go with, we're going to make some variables. We're going to say like Python equals true. I'm just going to come up here and comment this out before I forget. Like Python equals true. We're going to say like Netflix equals true. Okay, so we've got our variables here and we've set them to booleans. So now I'm going to get into basically if statements. Now if statements are really important because like I'm saying, usually when you're writing Python to actually do things, you're going to be taking other people's code and you're going to be kind of chaining it together into this long chain. So you really want to have these kind of statements that basically like, if one thing happens, do this. If something else happens, do this. Obviously, that's really important to do. And we use this kind of if-then statements all the time, right? Like, I'm going to take a nap. If it's before 5 p.m., don't wake me up. If it's after 5 p.m., do wake me up, right? That's kind of just like some branching logic. You're going to say if some conditions met, do something. If conditions not met, don't do something else. This is obviously something you do in Python. So let's just get into it. So we're going to go if like Python print Python is great. Cool. Okay, so what do we think is going to happen? What do you guys think is going to happen now? Right? So I'm just going to show you kind of the syntax here. So I'll run it. So the suspense. So Python is great. Awesome. Okay, so what happened here? So it's going to say if, and this is your condition, and it has to be true or false. So it's going to go up here and it's going to check for true. The syntax is just that you write this if statement, then you have your condition, then you put a colon, and then you put whatever you want to have happen here. So notice the 4 white spaces, which is really nice. It's just tabbing, right? So you go back, you tab out, go back, you tab out. If I don't do that, if I don't tab out like this and I go run, it's going to give me an error. Basically just an indentation error. It's fun, guys, because I get to show you all the errors today. So basically an indentation error basically just means that it was expecting some indentation after the colon because the IDs are smart and they know what they're looking for. And then you didn't give it to them, so then you just do this and it's going to work great. Okay, awesome. So the next thing I'm going to add in is I'm going to go with, so that was the first one. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an elif statement, like Netflix print This guy's kind of snarky, so he's going to go priorities met. Very, very snarky. Okay, so what's going to happen here? So basically an elif is basically saying, check the first block. It's saying, do I like Python? And if it likes Python, it's going to just do this here. Now an elif says that if this is not true, then check this part and do that instead. But if this is true, stop there. So see what I mean? So in this case, it's going to say Python's great. So both of these are true, right? I like Python and I like Netflix, but it's saying, you know what? We've already checked this. Python's great. Stop there. On the other hand, so we've got this elif statement. We don't even get there because basically these are linked together. If that makes sense, I'll just show you with an example. So I'm going to go to false. Run code, and so we have priorities man. So basically we're saying, okay, check if we like Python. We do not. It's false. So we're not gonna do it here. Elif, like Netflix. Okay, yep, we do that. So priorities man. And the last thing I'm going to show you is just an else statement. Else print ask me later. Okay, so an else statement basically it doesn't have a true false condition. So it's not basically what it's not. It doesn't need a condition to get triggered. All this basically says that is if this is false and this is false, always do this, right? So again, what's going to happen here is if I run it, it's just going to go with priorities man because basically we found a true statement here. But if these are both false, run, we're going to get ask me later. So it says, nope, this is false, ask me later. Now there is one thing that I do want to show you guys that if I just make this an if statement like this, and I make this true, and I make this true, and I run it, it's going to say Python's great and priorities man. So basically, because this is just an if now, these are basically separate code blocks entirely. Like we can just separate them out like this. These are just, this is going to run, and then we're going to just do the next thing, which is the next thing. Whereas if I do this elif, now this stuff is like more linked up like that. Now mind you, the amount of white space that I put here doesn't matter at all. It's still going to work just fine. So it's going to go down here. Yep, Python's great, and it's not even checking the rest of these. So that's just logic control. If statements, again, very important stuff, and does really, it obviously you have to be able to have that logical control of your programs. For example, I just wrote a little script for a friend of mine, and they were doing this really annoying manual task. They work in healthcare, and they basically had to check if patients had certain conditions, like their heart rate was up, or they hadn't seen an appointment in a while. And if they had these conditions that were met, they would then take all their information and they would put into a appointment making app calendar kind of thing, and then that would basically create an appointment because they needed to see this patient back in again. And they were doing this for like 3 hours once a week, and it was just taking them forever kind of thing. And it was so manual. So I could just go in there and I could write a little bit of code that would grab the information, and then it would say, okay, if these conditions are met, do this, and if not, do this kind of thing, right? So I saved my friend like 3 hours a week for like the rest of their job. It took me like an hour to write it. So this if stuff, like it can really help you out a lot once you kind of start applying to your life. So I'm just gonna basically just show you a little bit more complexity here. So we're gonna say if like Python and want to learn equals true. So this is just a new variable that I'm adding here. And so I'm just going to show you a couple of more add things because, again, important, is that if I go like Python, let's put a colon back here in here, and want to learn. There we go. So basically what's happening here is there's a couple things that are going to, I'll show you down here first. So print, let's say Netflix, I'm going to make this false for now. So print like Python, and I'm just going to, another thing if you're using PyCharm, you can go control \, and it's going to comment a whole bunch of lines out, so it's kind of just a nice little thing to save you some time. So in this case, if I say print Python, it's going to print out true, like Python, true, want to learn, run that, it's going to also print out true. So now there's ways you can combine this stuff together. For example, like Python, and let's say I don't want to learn. I'm lazy right now, so I don't really want to learn. So I'm going to say like Python and want to learn. So if anybody studied any logic or CD logic in school and stuff like that, or if you just kind of like can think about it a little bit, and just basically means both of these things need to be true before it's going to print true. So because this is false, it's going to print out false. And like Python or want to learn means just one of the two. One of the two has to be true, so this is going to become true. Or sorry, yeah, it's going to become true. There's just a bunch of different ways that we can basically combine different trues and falses together to get whatever we want here. So if you're ever like, oh, you know what? For my example again, like I'm going to take a nap. If it's before 5, please don't wake me up. If it's after 5, please do wake me up. But you could add on another thing, like if it's after 5, and I don't know, if it's after 5 and you feel like going running, please wake me up. If it's after 5 and you don't feel like going running, like I could say to my girlfriend, or chance, please do not wake me up, kind of thing, right? So this is kind of just ways you can combine all these statements together. So there's ands and ors and things. And another way that we can generate, so another thing that you have to know is how to generate these trues and falses. So we're going to say, call this generating booleans, right? So basically, in this case, I've said what I want these to be. I've said this is true, this is false, and then I have my code here where I say, like, I'm going to just take out this one so it's not overly complex. But I'm going to say if, like Python, and we know this is true because we've set it to be true, then do whatever. But there could be times where we don't know if something's going to be, like we're not going to be able to say whether something's true or false, like I have before. We want to be able to generate true or false statements ourselves. So I'm just going to show you a bunch of ways to do that really quickly. So basically there's these logical comparators where you say for is equal to 4. So notice how I had to do 2 equals here? This basically means, are these two things equal? If I do only 1 equals, it's just like how I'm using these for variables, and it gets all confused, gives you an error. But if I do equal to 4, and go run and print this, it's going to say true. Right, so 4 is equal to 4. Let's do, is 4 less than 4? False, of course. 4 is not less than 4. Is 4 less than or equal to 4? Well, of course it is, because it's less than or equal to 4, so true. And the last one we've got is just 4 is not equal to 4. So run that, and we're going to get false, of course, but let's say if we go 5, is 5 not equal to 4? Of course, it's true. So 5 does not equal 4. So these are just ways that you can, again, like you're going to want to generate booleans, basically through lots of doing comparisons, right? Like in data science, you might say, and I'm just going to do this, I'm going to mention something called pseudocode. Pseudocode is something that we write out our thoughts in English, almost like code, and then we go find the way to code it out, right? So I could say, so my pseudocode is, let's say, if, I don't know, section of data is larger than threshold, return true. So I could just have some pseudocode like that where I want to compare two things, and that would be like an operation I do every single day where I just go and I'd look at some threshold of data and I'd say, okay, is there anybody in, let's say I'm looking at a bunch of people with health issues, and I could say, okay, if anybody has is over a certain kind of way, I want to know, and I'll flag them as an outlier or something like that. So that would be, just an operation we do all the time. Okay, I've got to get moving here a little bit. Sorry guys, I'm kind of slow today. Yeah, so we'll just do a couple more things, and I'm sorry, I am gonna speed up here. If anybody has to leave right at 6, I totally understand, and thanks so much for joining us. But I'm gonna speed up a little bit here because I am a little bit behind the schedule. So okay, cool. So we're just gonna do some. We're gonna do data lists and data structures. If anybody's wondering, I did switch keyboards today, so my accuracy is pretty horrendous. But let's get into some lists. Okay, so basically, so far we've been storing everything in variables, right? So so variable 1, I am getting stored in variable 1. There we go. String goes into variable 1. But there's other ways, of course, to store things. So for example, we're going to say like list of numbers is going to equal to this, and whoops, come back please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So list of numbers. Basically, Everything else has just been a singular variable. So we have a variable, and we're going to put a string, a boolean, something like that in it. But oftentimes you want to be able to store a bunch of things that go together naturally, like a list, right? Like your grocery items, or maybe some numbers, or the ages of people that you know, or whatever it happens to be, right? So basically, this is just another way to store things. There's lots of different structures in Python for storing information in. The big ones being like lists and dictionaries and things like that. But basically, this is just a list. You can do kind of like cool things with lists, as I might be able to go print. I'm just going to go out and copy it. I'm going to say print some list of numbers, and I'm going to go run print. So 15. So cool. So basically, sum just means add up all of the different numbers in here. That's another built-in function. You can do lots of cool things with lists. The next thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is basically do iteration and repetition. So iteration just means, like, it's just a fancy word for saying do something over and over again. So like I kind of mentioned the script that I wrote for my friend, where basically they were doing this thing for 3 hours over and over. They would go check some patient data, they would move it into their appointment app, and they would make the appointment, then they go back and check more patient data, then they move it over to the thing, they just go over and over and over on loop, right? So obviously with computers, like, you want them to do things over and over and over until you stop them to do it. Like, just like you open up any program, any window in your browser or whatever, you don't want it to just like suddenly stop. You want it to keep going until you tell it to stop, fundamentally, right? So that means it's going on a loop, fundamentally. It's just doing something over and over and over and over for a fixed amount of time. So iteration is obviously very important. So I'm just going to kind of show you again the basic of iteration is something called a for loop. And so for is just kind of the term we use to say, I want you to do it for some amount of time. So for example, we're going to say for number in list of numbers, print number. So again, this is just a syntax. I don't want anyone to be afraid of this. So basically for, then I'm just calling this new variable number in list of numbers, right? This is a list of numbers. So number is going to individually take every single one of these. One, it's going to print. So I could have done this with 5 different print statements, but instead I can have the computer do it for me, right? So it's going to print them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. So that's pretty much it. Like that's iteration. If let's say I didn't know the sum function existed and I want to do sum equals 0, so I'm creating the sum equals 0, and I'm going to say sum equals sum plus number, and then we're going to go print sum. There we go. So if I go and I'm going to run this, so basically just like we saw before, it adds up all the elements in a list, and then it gives you a sum. So this is a similar way to do it, right? I've just said here's my sum, and it's equal to 0. I'm going to say for number in list, I'm going to say sum, which currently equals 0, 0 plus number. So this is going to start off with 1. So 0 plus 1, that's going to equal 1. Next time around, it's going to be 1 equals 1 plus 2, so 3, and it's going to work its way up to 15, kind of thing. So that's just iteration. Definitely can review this, but basically this is just doing things over and over and over and over in a loop. And don't be afraid of the syntax because it's not too scary. And I'm just going to see if there's anything else I really want to cover with you guys, because I did really take my time in this one, and I do kind of apologize about that. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to show you how to do is this is important because the best thing about using Python is using other people's code. I want to show you how to create basically like your own functions. So I've been talking about functions a lot today, right? So I've said there's sum, there is len, there is print. These are all different functions that do things, right? Now, what actually like sum does, for example, is I can do help sum, and I can print this. So I can run this. And so basically this is a print statement. This is like I said, when you buy a car, there's a manual to the car, and it's kind of complex. So basically if I print the help statement, this is the manual. This is the very technical language that they've basically written how to find out information on it. This is why I recommended you guys go to Google and just type like, what does the sum function do? Or how do I add up numbers and sum and things like this. So anyway, somewhere in here is going to be the rules for using sum. The point is, actually I can't find it right now, but anyways, the point is that there's all these built-in functions that someone else, what is the meaning of a blank line? In the code, actually nothing, my friend, absolutely nothing. The blank lines are just like for readability. Yep, that is all. Good, excellent question though. Unlike this, which has a big meaning in it, The blank line right here is it's just for readability, completely. Yeah, okay, so great. So anyway, so like I was saying, there's all these built-in functions like help is a built-in function, sum, lang, all these are built-in functions. So if you lose my train of thought and got it. Basically, these functions all do stuff that's written in Python, but they wrote the code, and you don't need to know what the code does, right? So len, let's say for example, name. We know what this does. It's going to print how many letters are in my name. And if I run that, I'm going to see that it's 8. Awesome. So len, which stands for length, clearly, is going to go and it's going to count the amount of things, whatever you pass it, and it's going to give you that count back. Now, that count is probably done with a for loop or something just like I wrote here, but it hides all the code in the background so you don't see it. So you don't have to know you don't know how length has to work, you just know that you can use it, right? So I'm going to show you how to make your own functions, and that you can call them the exact same way. So let's say I want to create a function called def Nicholas's sum. I'm going to pass in a list of numbers. And if I was, basically, don't worry about this. It's just string. Oh man, that's too confusing. Okay. Basically what I was doing there is you're supposed to write comments, like I said, communicate with yourself in the future. I was going to write a comment. Don't worry about that for now. And I'm just going to take this. Sum. X like that. Going here. There we go. Return sum. Okay, so I know that seemed like a lot, but I will walk through that really slowly, and I promise it will not be too mystical. One last thing I'm going to add is add a comment so people know what this does. I take a list of numbers and return their sum. Awesome. Okay, so basically, this is really cool. So I know this might not seem like it's the coolest thing ever, but it's really, really great. Basically, all these functions we've been using, for example, like sum and length and all this other stuff, they're basically someone else wrote this. But what I'm showing you right now is how you can write your own comments and you can call them in the future. So what we're going to do now, we've defined a function. We're just going to say def just stands for define. Again, just syntax, don't be afraid of that. Nicholas's sum. I'm Nicholas. I don't think you can use an apostrophe. Yeah, that's going to mess things up. So we're just going to say this is a sum that it's my sum. It's a way to sum things that I'm saying. It's going to take a list of numbers in. So anyway, a list of numbers, and basically it's going to. And I don't want this confusing, so I'm going to just go like L of num. There we go. I don't want you to be confused with this up here. It's just a list of numbers here, and so basically it's taking a list of numbers, and it's going to say the sum equals 0, and then it's going to go L of sum equals sum plus number, return sum. Okay, great. So basically what I did here is that's just my little function now. I've said, okay, obviously there's a built-in for sum, so creating my own sum is not necessary. I do not need to do this, but for educational purposes, I now have my sum, which I've made, which will take a list of numbers, and it's going to do this little bit of code, and you guys actually understand all this code. I've done a variable. I've assigned it to 0. The reason I started at 0 is because when I'm counting up all the numbers, I'm going to start with 0. Then I'm going to loop through it, and I'm going to say for each number in the list that you gave me, the list of numbers, it's going to be this list of numbers, right? I'm just going to calculate the sum, and this return statement is very important because at the end of it, it's going to give me back the sum. So now I can say something like I can call print Nicholas's sum, and we're going to go list of numbers. Run that. Run. Okay, so 15. Okay, so now if you're a little bit confused here, I understand a lot is kind of happening and we are kind of moving a little quick. So basically what I've said is this is my function. I've created my own function. This is my own little computer code within this script. It is mine, it sums up numbers, and it's the best one because I made it. Are the variable names of the function exclusive to the function or are they global? The variable names of the functions are... So the variable names with like scope, you're asking about scoping, and so any variables you have within the function are going to be local to that. So sum, for example, is going to be local to Nicholas's sum, and if I use it later on, it will not, like it won't know, if I try to access sum later on, it won't be able to find sum, it'll just be local to the function. The names of the function are the variable names of the function. The variable names themselves, like Nicholas's sum, is a global variable. So you know what I mean? So obviously this is the global scoping I'm using here. So if I do Nicholas's sum here, it's going to find the function. I hope that That was not too confusing, but for Ralph, who had a question about that. Okay, great. So anyway, so basically I've made my own function. So the reason I just wanted to show you guys this really quickly is that now you kind of understand, like, I feel like a lot when we write code and we use other people's functions, it's like there's this mystical thing and the computer's just doing it in the background. But the way that it's like doing this stuff in the background is somebody probably, who is working on Python at a university, at Google, wherever they happen to be. They just wrote some code, and then this code just executes when you use it, right? So I just like I don't know if I've named this all properly, but basically it's just like if I call def function print, oops, you don't know how I work, but I work all the same. don't know if that's too silly, but let's say function. I'm just going to call function here. So, okay, there we go. Hashtag this out. And I promise there'll be a point here. So basically, I just made another function, and I called it function. And this function, all it does when you call this function is it says, you don't know how I work, but I work all the same. And so when, of course, I called my function, it just printed it out here. The point of this is that when you, the point of this is that now I'm going to show you how to import other libraries. And this is kind of like the really cool part, right? So, for example, I'm going to, I know that we're super running out of time here. I think pandas is good for this. Import pandas as PD, and we'll just go with like df equals PD dot data frame. Right, okay. Cool, so yeah, I don't exactly have enough time to get into this, but basically, this statement I just want to show you is basically something called importing. So, importing is just a way to say that, like, remember how I said there's these libraries filled with toolboxes? And these toolboxes are written by other people who are very, very, very good at coding, and they work super fast, and they're just amazing, they're all free and stuff like that. And you're like, how do I get these toolboxes? They sound amazing. So all of the functions we've been using so far today have been built-ins. And then I made my own function at the end, because I want you guys to see that, and I hope you did if you're following around too. Now what I'm doing is I'm showing you how to basically bring other people's functions and these amazing toolboxes into your code. So basically, pandas is a library. Pandas is a library. So just to kind of ignore what everything else I've written here for a second, let's undo this. It's got to do there. Okay. Okay. So basically, pandas is a library, and it's really good for manipulating spreadsheets. It's basically, if you've ever worked in Excel and you're like, oh my god, I'm doing this thing over and over, like again, my friend who is writing this stuff for patients, basically you're working with spreadsheets, and Excel is not the nicest place to do a lot of work on spreadsheets. But now that you know all this logic stuff and all this stuff for if statements and loops, you could write like a really good script to basically do a lot of work for you in Excel. But the thing that you're thinking is like, okay, but how do I get Excel to work with Panda? Or how do I get Excel to work with Python? Well, the way that you get Excel to work with Python is you just import this library called Pandas. Pandas is really good at reading basically Excel files into your code. And basically what I just did here is I said, import Pandas. So this is this amazing library called Pandas. And I'm going to give it this as PD just means the short form. So don't be intimidated by that. It just means that this is just the short form. So instead of saying like, instead of having to write Pandas everywhere in my code, I just write PD. And now I'm going to basically create a data frame. And a data frame is exactly just like an Excel object. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to say that this data frame equals pandas. I'm going to get rid of the PD. I feel like that's confusing. Pandas.dataFrame. Right, cool. So basically I've said, bring this library in, and then one of the main things you can do in this is you can create these things called data frames, and Excel works, like, it really works great with these, with basically representing Excel. So this is all kind of like a little bit of a convoluted way to say that with these simple lines of code, now that you guys understand what functions are, if I import pandas, it's basically, pandas is a whole collection of other people's functions that are amazing. And then as soon as I bring it in, basically I'm going to say this is the library name, pandas, right? I've got this library in, and now dot whatever function I want from pandas. Basically, and this is going to basically, so what data frame does is it creates a data frame object, and then you can store Excel files in it, and then you can use all your other stuff to manipulate the Excel files. It's wonderful. And I think that's where I'm going to kind of leave you there. I know that maybe if you got that, I hope you're really excited, and if you didn't get that, then hey, then maybe you can come back next week and we talk about it, you can send me some questions or whatever you kind of want to do there. But like already what you know is you know how to like control a lot of different information flow and data flow through Python itself. And you at the end here know how to import other people's really amazing code to do things. And obviously that's a pretty whirlwind tour, but I'm going to say, like, for example, if I go just going to do this, and then we'll get some closing remarks here. And I go Python pandas data analysis library, right? So install pandas now, documentation, or let's see getting started. Getting started will be more fun. So getting started. So basically this is going to tell you how to, it should tell you how to use, let's do Python pandas tutorial. There we go. So there's a nice YouTube video. There's a nice tutorial here, documentation. I want to find a beginner-friendly 10 minutes to pandas. Okay, cool. So thank you for bearing with me on that. So basically, this 10 minutes to pandas kind of thing is you're exactly going to import pandas like this, and this is going to run you through how to manipulate basically spreadsheets and all this really cool stuff that you might want to do to make your lives easier in Python. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You basically know enough to follow this tutorial now already. And you can do all this stuff with numbers and data analysis, and it's really great. So we'll just finish up here, and I'm going to see if I got through everything that I want to get to. I kind of doubt it. Comments, what's a program? First program, yep, errors, variables. Yep, we got almost all the way to the end. And final thoughts, yeah, GitHub's a great place. Just like I said, you can import stuff from pandas, you can import it from all of GitHub, so you become like that guy in the Matrix, you just plug things in your head. It's pretty amazing. And yeah, so that's it. That's us. We're BCloud ready. If you enjoyed, please, if I'd love a like on Facebook, but I'd really like it if people wouldn't mind taking the tutorial or the survey that I'm going to send out afterwards. We have some really great courses that we run. I don't know if this is the data science one or the GitHub one or the DevOps one. But basically, we have some really wonderful courses, and we can send you emails on those. If you want any more information about our courses, please just respond to the email I'm going to be sending out after this. And please do the survey if you wouldn't mind for me. And if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah. Is there any? I can hear somebody's kind of loud there. Do you have a question, or do you want to type that in? Siddhartha.
Hi.
Hey,
Are you able to
how you doing? Hey.
are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to check. I'm right now working as a data analyst. A bit like I was, what do you call, when I studied my master's, I was a bit into Python, but more on the analysis side rather than the programming.
Sure.
So my current job doesn't require me to do Python. I mean, quite often. It's mostly based in Excel and SQL and Power BI, which is upcoming. So just wanted to know how you guys can how can I collaborate with you guys in terms of a job opportunity so that I can excel and be abreast of the latest tools and technology that might be required in
Yeah,
order
that's
to.
actually like a wonderful question. So, we're actually we kind of came off a long spell of doing our product, and we've done
Mhm.
actually quite a lot of training placement before. So we're actually just offering a course in DevOps right now, and so DevOps is more on the programming side, more like cloud architecture and stuff. And
Okay.
we do offer a course. Basically, currently we offer a course on the weekends, which is basically a machine learning bootcamp. And it's really great bootcamp because basically it's a 15 years veteran who's going to be teaching you machine learning. Do you use machine learning right now, or it's more like just like a pure analyst position?
It's more like reporting. Machine learning, I know kind of, but I have not gone into those deep learning and reinforced learning. I
Yeah,
understand machine learning, but I mean, I've still to kind of figure the value of machine learning apart from that AUC, ROC curves and the confusion matrix and all that. Like at last it comes all to R square and the typical curves, right? So beyond that, I'm still kind of have to explore and learn.
yeah. If you're interested in learning that, so basically I would say that Python is. So machine learning, a lot of people talk about it and they maybe give it too much emphasis, but it definitely is a really important tool in the toolbox, especially on the analysis end and drawing the conclusions. Where no doubt you know a lot about preparing data, probably cleaning messy data, I would gather, and obviously visualization and presenting your results. I would say some of the strongest analytical tools are the machine learning stuff, as you know. And so the course that we offer takes basically a person through the beginnings of Python, up through a lot of the data cleaning stuff, into basic machine learning stuff. And we always try to work with real world data so you can get abreast of how messy it can be and trying to find out, I guess, the value of it. For example, we did a lot of time series analysis. So
Hmm.
for this, basically, so people were thinking they've been using more basic Excel methods to predict their inventory, and that was giving them some pretty wide margins of error. So we found out that we could just do like again some pretty, I wouldn't say cutting edge machine learning stuff, but pretty like stock staple decision tree stuff to really get their error down for their like basically time series forecasting. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely respond. Like I'm going to send out an email after this, basically with a survey. The survey, if you do, you get a kind of discount code on one of these courses, and then we can kind of give you, yeah, I don't know, like a very compressed rundown of how Python is used in data science, and up through machine learning.
Yeah, because in terms of what is required stuff in the current market, in terms of like because it's endless, right? Like there's so much like in AI and all that. So
Yeah,
I mean, how much can I kind of what do you call run across and how to kind of get based on that best job, uh, best job in the sense best career. So that's what I was curious and
yeah,
because I like uh, more on like the interview side. I'm much more curious rather than the learning through the courses because I'm familiar because I've done that in the masters. So
for
I
sure.
would
So
say,
sort of like career mentoring.
yeah, mentoring. You can say, yeah,
Yeah,
mentoring or helping
like
me get
mock
some
interviews, like
mock
that
interviews,
stuff,
yeah,
and just
some
kind of
job opportunities and
yeah,
all based on that more rather than the typical academic tutorials. So
for sure, for sure. That's something we absolutely do help out with. So the current course that we have for DevOps, which we're also going to be rolling out for machine learning very soon, is that basically it's a 3 month program. So
mhm.
basically, for the first 2 months, we would generally do more of the skill stuff. But if you kind of already have a lot of skills, um, basically when I started learning, like working with our senior machine learning guy, I found out that like although I did have a lot of academic learning, I definitely had some holes in, a lot of holes in my learning. And so basically we just, especially if a guy who knows a lot like yourself is going to come to the program and has pretty good foundations, we're probably just going to like fill in the holes and like work on those weaknesses for at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
like a
correct,
month.
exactly.
Yeah,
When the
like
glad
maybe as small as a month, basically just to make sure that he feels like you're up for a live project. And then as we get projects, so we actually work with a lot of recruiters too. We do a boot camp that teaches recruiters about technology because often they're tasked with hiring like a senior DevOps consultant. They don't know what DevOps is, let alone the technology stack. So we do a boot camp to teach them how to teach them the technology so they can hire more effectively. And so we have a pretty decent network of recruiters, so we can through them often get different consulting work. And so we take these live projects. We would hopefully help because if we take a new student, we're going to have to do a lot of teaching with them. If you're much more seasoned, you have your master's. We try to fill in your holes in the knowledge. Then we put you on a live project right away, and basically the career mentoring would just continue until you got a position. Um, and I can definitely, after this, if you don't mind sending me a message or something like that, and I can definitely reach out with you, like reach out with the details of the program. It's a nice thing because it's quite flexible because we do very compressed programs for absolute beginners. Then we do much of these more career ready ones where we just try to like get you on an internship as soon as we can, like a live project, and then just basically promote you in our networks. And again, I guess the live projects maybe you would not also be as interested in because you have lots of work experience. Um, so I guess maybe are you just asking mostly to be like kind of like understand the state of the market, be given this mentoring, and then be like basically
yeah,
connected with
yeah,
jobs?
because maybe I can do a bit of data munging, data analysis, I would say, and a bit of machine learning, but not like a typical development of codes. Uh, so more like a mix of maths, I would say, mix of stats, a few visualizations, and ML, those kind of careers, and maybe get a much better what do you call it? Just jump off the career. So similar to that
Right, interesting. So you're
because
saying
it's
you would
endless,
want to.
right? Like I can't become a data scientist. More like becoming maybe an analytics consultant or a business consultant. So similar on those lines.
Okay, so are you saying that you are a data scientist and you want to move to those other
No,
ones,
no,
or
no, 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 no. I
like
mean,
more like
my
analyst?
skill set might not make me a data scientist.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Like the really great thing is the programs that we do run. Like obviously we have some sort of like um like assume structure to them. Well, not assume structure, but we have some structure to them so that they kind of like can work with people who have more traditionally like our career switchers. Oftentimes we get people who are from have a lot of experience in different countries, but they don't have experience here. So this is why we really try to take people and get them onto the internships as quickly as we can, so that we know that they're like job ready, they're confident in their skills. Like we can. They're going to have senior, like an advisor who will be a senior person, but they can really accomplish tasks on their own before we can like promote them in our networks. But again, the nice thing about the program is that we can like take people of varying degrees of education and background and like kind of get them to these next levels. Yeah, I'll definitely be. I'm going to be sending out that survey, and if you just respond to that one through Meetup, and we can set up a Zoom session or whatever you'd like, and kind of just yeah, go from there for sure. And we're taking students right now. I think we have 5 for the next cohort, and we're looking for another 5. So you sound like a great fit for it for sure.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. Thanks. I'll keep in touch. I mean, not maybe immediate, but maybe once in the upcoming, let's say, months or years. I'll definitely look
Yeah,
forward because right now I have joined some company and I can't, what do you call, skip that, right? Like it's hardly been 3, 4 months. So maybe,
yeah,
yeah,
of course,
a year
yeah.
from now.
And it's honestly it's cool that you're like it's like come to learn Python with us, man. I do I appreciate that because like yeah, even if you can't use it for a while, might as well just like get his head start, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sure.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'll keep in touch with you. So maybe I can get on these things. So yeah,
awesome.
thanks.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming out. And I see another question about how, or another comment about how that was a lot. Really quickly, it was. It was. I don't know. I might have to make this 2 hours. If anybody could type in for me in the chat, if anyone would be willing to learn 2 hours of Python straight, I keep wanting to make this 2 hours because then I could show you some more. I could do a little bit of machine learning. I could do a little bit of data science with pandas and some analysis and stuff like that. Can anybody just type in chat if they would end up staying for 2 hours? And if you would do a 2 for if like you're like no, 2 hours is way too long. Like I know there's a whole bunch of people still left in here, so would you please do that for me? Just type into chat if you would stay, and type 2 into chat if you would not stay for 2 hours. And we'll leave it there. 2 hours, okay, would do 2 hours. Awesome. That was enough for today. I do more material as a second session. 2 hours is fine by me. Cool. Okay, so maybe next week I will run this for 2 hours and we can take our time a little bit more and just like see some more fun, cool stuff at the end. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, I will send out that. Please, please, please do the survey for me. 5 minutes. Appreciate it so much. And we hope we see you out. There's going to be more free stuff coming up too for machine learning, I think. And again, if anybody wants to get into DevOps, which is like sort of like the more IT, more technical side, it's not so much the analytics side, but that we are offering a wonderful program about that. So feel free to respond to me on meetups, and we'll get in touch. And awesome. Oh yeah, so nice. I'm glad you guys had a good time, and yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you all soon. We hope. Okay. Have a good night.